27th Commission meeting. If you would, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our first item of business tonight is to consider a proclamation for Sister...
The minutes, sir, we need?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we need to approve the minutes, don't we? I was just ready to get on to business. Okay. Consider the minutes of the September 13th, 2022 meeting.
I move that we approve the minutes.
I second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Thank you. All right, Mrs. Bunting, we'll have you come up now. Okay, now we will consider the proclamation.
Thank you, commissioners, especially Leroy, for coordinating this, because I think it's significant when we have a outstanding citizen, a Newton native, celebrating some of the achievements that she's had in the last 65 and 70 years, so thank you. The proclamation reads, whereas Sister Rosemary Sieg, CSJ, which stands for the Congregation of St. Joseph, entered religious life as a Sister of St. Joseph on July 26, 1952. She was from St. Mary Parish in Newton, Kansas, where she attended the parish grade school and then completed high school at Mount St. Mary Convent. And whereas she earned a bachelor's degree from St. Mary of the Plains College in Dodge City, Kansas, and a master's degree from Pittsburgh State University in Pittsburgh, Kansas. And whereas Sister Rosemary began her teaching career as a kindergarten teacher at St. Anthony's School in Wichita. And although she has taught all grades, kindergarten through 8th, she has enjoyed kindergarten and first grade the most. Preparing classes for First Communion and the Sacrament of Reconciliation has always been a very special and happy experience. And whereas her missions included St. Anthony, Blessed Sacrament, St. Jude, and the Cathedral in Wichita, as well as the parish school in Parsons, Derby, Newton, and Wellington in Kansas, and Groves, Texas. In 1984, she returned to her home parish in Newton, where she cared for her mother until her mother's death, while continuing her teaching ministry in the school she herself once attended. At present, she teaches part-time at St. Mary's Catholic School in Newton as a presence to the children.
Now therefore, I, Clint McBroom, Mayor of the City of Newton, Kansas, do hereby present this proclamation to Sister Rosemary Sieg for her dedicated service and commitment to her faith and community through her 70 years in religious life and 65 years as an educator.
And if you come, can you come here?
Yeah, we'll need a motion from someone in a second.
Do we have any number, anything goes with it? I would move.
This is a great honor for me.
Oh.
Thank you so much.
Well, Sister Rosemary, thank you for being here tonight. We're privileged to have you.
Well, thank you very much. I feel privileged. An enormous thank you to our city commission and anyone else who helped to bring this moment to us all.
Yeah.
And I'd like a profound thank you to Barbara Bunting for arranging everything so perfectly. And thank you to everyone for being here. Newton is a spectacular city because all of you wonderful people are in it. I'm always proud to say, I'm from Newton, Kansas. And I'm always proud to say, I'm from St. Mary's in Newton, Kansas. Again, my thanks. God bless you. And thank you for coming.
Yeah, we'll do a picture. Yeah, I think, did we have a motion?
I would move we approve this proclamation.
A second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve this proclamation. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Thank you.
And if we can have a picture, I'm introducing also the principal of St. Mary's, Mr. Joshua Barkdale.
That's okay, that's not your fault.
Mayor McBroom, where do you want the photo?
Just in front,
That's
actually, if you want to.
perfect.
Yeah.
Typically they.
We'll let you scoot over and stand right here in front of the sign, and then I'll stand right behind you. That'll be the best shot, or right next to you.
Do it for that.
Are you gonna be okay for a minute?
I photo bomb sent me pictures over there. When you're ready.
Look at her there.
Hi. There we go. Thank you. Do you want to present?
Step and repeat, step and repeat.
Oh, thank you. How beautiful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for serving me here for so long.
You're welcome.
I am not going to put this up, but I can prove that I've had a relationship with Maria of East Church of St. Jude, in which I went to Scouts there as a kid for all my years growing up, and so I grew up very close to there. Yeah, so just my, and all of my family actually went to college there. My mom's side of the family is all Catholic, so we've had a long relationship with the college community. So, well, thank you. Well, we're glad.
How do you do that?
Thank you. We're very glad that you're here this evening.
Much please.
Anybody else want a picture? Barbara, do you want a picture with her? Sure. Go ahead.
Can I ask her a question really quick? I just want to ask, okay,
Hey, Josh.
I just want to ask you, it says in there that you enjoy preferably the kindergarten and first graders. I get to work with littles at my church too. What is it about them that you really enjoy?
I enjoy, when I teach them something, they're so happy when they find out. Like, especially reading, you know, like, I would say, like, what's the sound of this and this? Now, can you blend it? And then we hang on to that sound until we get to the end. And they're so happy. You can hardly believe I can read that word now.
That's exciting. Wow, thank you. Mhm.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Well, thank you to all of you that came out for that joyous occasion tonight. What a fun way to start the evening. Next up is item number 3 for tonight is a proclamation for October 9th through the 15th is Fire Prevention Week, and Fire Marshal Harder will come forward and present that. I mean, that's going to be a hard thing to follow up, so we'll try to stay.
Good luck, Andy.
I'll see what I can do.
We'll try to stay awake through this.
Well, this is starting my 3rd year as the fire marshal of the city of Newton. I'm excited this year because we'll get to be in the schools. We haven't been able to be in the schools for Fire Prevention Week for 2 years now. I also wanted to bring something else up. My daughter drew a picture and got it, entered it into PBS Kids, and it was published in their calendar for this year. It's Fire Station 3. So kind of neat for Newton that we're in the state
That is cool.
calendar for PBS Kids.
Wow, that's neat. That's good.
Did she get her drawing ability from you?
Mine's a little better.
I'm gonna tell her that the next time I
Yeah.
see her.
That's cool.
This is also another big milestone for Fire Prevention Week. To designate the week of October 9th through 15th, 2022 as Fire Prevention Week, while also marking a milestone 100th anniversary for Fire Prevention Week. Whereas the City of Newton is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living in and visiting Newton, and whereas fire is a serious public safety concern both locally and nationally, and homes are the locations where people are at greatest risk from fire, and whereas, according to the National Fire Protection Association in 2021, local fire departments responded to an estimated 1.35 million fires in the United States, resulting in 3,800 civilian fire deaths, 14,700 reported civilian fire injuries, and an estimated $15.9 billion in property damage. And whereas, smoke alarms sense smoke well before you can, alerting you to danger in the event of a fire, in which you may have as little as 2 minutes to escape safely. And whereas, working smoke and CO alarms cut the risk of dying in reported home fires in half, and everyone should learn the sounds of the alarms. And whereas, residents who have planned and practiced a home fire escape plan are more prepared and will therefore be more likely to survive a fire. And whereas, Newton Fire EMS is dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through education, prevention, and protection. And whereas, our stakeholders are responsive to public education measures and are able to take personal steps to increase their safety from fire, especially in their businesses and homes. And whereas, the 2022 Fire Prevention Week theme, Fire Won't Wait, Plan Your Escape, effectively serves to remind us it is important to the critical importance of developing a home escape plan with all members of your household and practicing it regularly.
Therefore, I, Clint McBroom, Mayor of Newton, Kansas, do hereby proclaim October 9th through the 15th, 2022 as Fire Prevention Week, and I urge all citizens of Newton to develop a home fire escape plan with all members of the household and practice it twice a year, and to support the many public safety activities and efforts of Newton Fire EMS during Fire Prevention Week 2022. We'll need a motion and a second.
So moved.
I second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Thank you.
She did a real good job drawing a picture of you.
All right, thank you. Item number 4, consider request to close 500 to 700 blocks of Main Street for the Halloween walk on October 31st of 2022. Denise.
Yes, thank you. This is a request from the Lions Club. They are going to be holding their Halloween walk downtown. They were requesting that the 500 through 700 blocks be closed from 5 o'clock, which would be when they would close it. They would start the event at 7:30, or 7:30, 5:30, and then open again at 7 o'clock. And staff has looked at this and is approving of it.
I'd move for approval of this closure.
I'll second that.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Thank you. Item number 5, consider an updated water conservation plan and ordinance amending Chapter 22, Article 4 of the City Code. Suzanne.
Yes, Commissioners, the city has a water conservation plan. We've had one that's been in place. The last time we updated it was 1997. When we're receiving low-interest loans through the state of Kansas, it is required that we have a current plan in place. And so the plan that you have in your packet was updated so that it has all of the 2022 information in it. The information on page 3 that talks about water use conservation goals, that is kind of plug information that's provided by the state. They do a calculation to say how many gallons per person per day is used in our community. So that's all brought in from the state. And then all of the different tables that you see with conservation practices to be taken, these are things that we have to put in here and have target dates to try and accomplish these. These are things that we do on a pretty regular basis anyway. We provide information in the utility bills, talking to people about how to conserve water. And then we updated to the current rate because there was an older rate that was shown in here. And then everything that you see on drought response, the water watch, then water warnings and all of that, none of that was changed. It's all the same as it has been in the past. And should we get to a time when we're seeing our well levels dropping significantly, then we would come forward and say, hey, we need to maybe institute one of these steps in the water conservation plan. But we would ask that you would approve the plan via approval of the ordinance this evening.
You have an ordinance number for us, Denise?
5093-22.
I move we approve 5093-22.
One second.
Right, there's a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Thank you. Item number 6, consider an ordinance updating Chapter 19 of the City Code regarding sewers. Suzanne?
Yes, we are in update mode here. And the sewer chapter, we had a customer back in 2017 that was trucking in waste. And this has happened from time to time over the years where we have customers that their facility is outside of the city limits. They are not in an area where they have a sanitary sewer that's near them. And they truck their waste in from whatever their business is. And at the time, this customer, they were bringing us a product that was causing us problems with the new treatment plant, and it was causing us problems with our phosphorus removal process. And once that individual quit hauling in, we haven't had anybody else that came or was interested in doing that. And then recently, we've had somebody else that was interested. And so we started looking at the codes, being able to talk to them about the rates and everything that is required. And we saw that we really needed to do an update because since then, and I kind of talked about this a bit in the packet, we have quit doing lab work in-house at the wastewater treatment plant a few years ago. And that was due to cost increases because all of the quality assurance regulations were requiring that our staff and our equipment had to be to a certain grade and certain certifications, and it was just cheaper for us to go ahead and have that done by a private lab. We were going to save about 50% of the cost to go ahead and take it to a private lab as opposed to increasing all of that. Now, we still have what's called a field lab. We still perform tests so that we can tell whether operations are going well and how the plant is functioning. And we still do, pH tests and those kind of things. But we had to take that section out of the code. And while we were here, we thought we better update everything to the 2022 standards throughout. Since the chapter of the sewer chapter in the code was updated, we've had a new agreement with North Newton. And there was a section that spoke to North Newton in here. We needed to update that to the current language that showed how we handle North Newton and their waste. And then on page 4 is the area that it specifically speaks to the discharge of liquid waste that's trucked into the plant. And we set these rates accordingly. If there's a base charge of $100 per day for them to bring it in, and then the $10 per load, and then we have them paying what our customers are paying, and before those were a little bit off, so we want to get that up to date. And then there's the chart on page 15 that shows what the rate increases have been over time and shows how the funding is going from some of that 38% plant upgrade fee to offset the costs for that the base minimum fee. So we got all of these things updated in here, and now we bring it to you with an ordinance that would make all these changes the law. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to try and answer those, but that's the long and the short of it.
Any questions from anyone? If not, we'll need an ordinance number.
5094-22.
I move we approve ordinance 5094-22.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Thank you. Item number 7 is Full Vision. Item A, receive the county commission report on the annexation findings of Full Vision into the city limits. Chris?
Yeah, I could lead on this, and Suzanne might jump in on the engineering agreement, item C. This is a continuation of an item that you had seen before. As you recall, annexation, that's bringing property into the city boundaries. What we're dealing with here is Full Vision, and it's not adjacent to the current city property or city boundaries, so it's what's referred to as an island annexation. It tips off with Full Vision submitting an application asking to be annexed into the city. After that's done, the city adopts a resolution, which the commission did, asking the county to hold a hearing and make certain findings that the annexation wouldn't inhibit the growth of any surrounding city within the county. They made those findings. After that, there's a 30-day waiting protest period. There was no such protest. And then it comes back to you. You can adopt this ordinance and it will annex them into the city. Of note, because we're 60 days to a general election, it will not take effect until the day after. So that would be November 9th. But you can still approve the ordinance tonight and it would be effective at that time. So two-part motion, unless you have any questions. I guess the first would be to receive the county findings, which are consistent with the annexation, and then 2 would be to consider the annexation ordinance. I would stand for any questions, and I'd let Suzanne address item C after we get through A and B.
And Commissioners, if I may, also, Doug is here with Full Vision if he would like to make any comments or help answer any questions.
Yeah, I'm kind of here if you guys got any questions on the project. I can give you a quick 2-minute summarization of the project, but Full Vision's been around since 1958, and all this time has not been in the city of Newton, so we're approaching 65 years. Company's changed hands a couple times. Currently, we are 100% employee-owned, which is exciting for our team, so all the stakeholders are local. The company's only had 3 ownerships in the history of the company, so we're all currently 100% employee-owned. That happened back in 2019, so we're fully committed to growing the business. As we grow, our employees grow, and they all share in that. So we've grown significantly in the last 5 years, so we're basically out of floor space. A few of you have been out to witness that, so we're kind of been busting at the seams and need this next investment to grow our business. And so we're adding on 35,000 square feet. And in the diagram there, we've got the land to do that. It's actually our main factory there. We're going to add on 35,000 square feet to the east. And we've gotten the approvals on that with some setbacks and so forth, and a couple other processes we've gone through. So that's the plan. With that, 35,000 square feet, we're putting in about close to $3 million worth of new equipment. And so the total project's going to approach probably around $7 million with the building and the equipment. So that'll set the stage for our next growth. And so we've already grown the company quite a bit, like I said. So yeah, our objective is continuous improvement. That's why we're putting in new processes. And then obviously the floor space is for growth. So what we petition and why the reason for annexation in the city is part of that growth and allowing us to grow and some cost reductions. You know, we need to be able to join in with the city as far as the city sewage system goes. So that's the big need on Full Vision's behalf. And then our commitment is to grow the company and obviously, add additional jobs, for the community. And like I said, I think the big thing with our company is we're locally owned, with all the employees. So, but that's I could go on much longer than that, but any questions that I could answer for you?
Thanks. No, thanks for being here tonight.
All right, we appreciate your consideration.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And for the benefit of the commission and the public, we will probably have a development agreement upcoming at the next meeting or maybe the meeting after that will detail out some of those conditions that Mr. Doug spoke of. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so first thing we need tonight is receive the reports. We'll need a motion to receive it.
I'd make that motion.
Second.
It is a motion and a second to receive the county commission report. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. All right, thank you. Item B, an ordinance number,
5095-22.
I move we approve ordinance 5095-22.
I'll second that.
okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign.
Welcome to Newton.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Personally, I'm in Newton, but I'm glad to have the company.
Good.
So are we.
Yeah.
All right.
Update that letterhead.
Item C is to consider, or Suzanne, do you want to speak about C?
It's just the engineering agreement for the sewer extension. This has to go under US 50. The discussion about the sewer itself and the cost will come with the development agreement, but things are so slow getting stuff through the state. I'd like to get the design going because we are going to have to wait, we know, when we get the plans sent off to them. So knowing that they are coming in because they want sewer, we know that they're going to work through the details with us and it'll all be okay. So I'd like to get permission to go ahead and start.
Okay.
Formal motion or just a head nod?
Formal motion, please.
I move we approve engineering agreement with PEC for the design services.
I second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Thank you for your work on that, Suzanne. All right, item 8 is Planning Commission. Chris or Suzanne, item A. We'll go with that one first.
Yeah, I'll take this one. Both of these have to do with Full Vision. And Full Vision was considered for the zoning amendment at the Planning Commission meeting. Because they're coming into the city, then we have to set a zoning for them. And so they requested I-2 zoning. And at the Planning Commission on September 12th, it passed unanimously. They approved them coming in as I-2 zoning. And so that is the recommendation that comes from them. And then there is an ordinance that goes along with that. So we would ask that you would go ahead and approve or receive the recommendation and then consider the ordinance that designates the zoning.
I move that we consider the recommendation and approve it.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second for item A. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Thank you. And item B, we'll need an ordinance number.
Sure. 5096-22.
That was going to be my guess.
Ordinance heavy meeting.
Yes.
Sharp mayor.
Yeah, I'm on it tonight. All right, we'll need a motion for that.
I would move we approve ordinance 5096-22.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Thank you. All right, item 9 is condemnation proceedings. First thing is receive a survey for the condemnation of real property interests located within the Kansas Logistics Park. Chris.
Thank you. This is also a continued item from your previous meeting. As you recall, at that meeting, you approved a resolution that called for a survey of the property. That survey has now been completed. It's showing right there on the big board. This is a physically abandoned rail right-of-way that runs across Southeast 12th. The survey depicts the property, and that was called for in the resolution. The city had already obtained quitclaim deeds from the adjacent property owners, but the rail right-of-way still shows on the title. So city staff is asking you to consider this ordinance, which would authorize the filing of condemnation proceedings at district court. However, prior to any filing, there will be good faith negotiations based on an appraised value of the property. As you see, I had item C asking for authority to extend an offer. I don't have that information yet, so I'm going to ask that we table C. But I will come back to you at a certain point and ask for authority to extend an offer. First step would be to receive the survey, and then number 2 would be the ordinance. I would stand for any questions on this file.
I move that we receive the survey for the condemnation of real property that was just described.
I will second that.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Thank you. I bet it's 5097-22.
You would be correct.
Thank you.
On a roll.
I move we approve ordinance 509722.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion, and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. And then we will need a motion to table item C.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
There's a motion, and a second to table item C. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Thank you. All right, item 10, Suzanne, review the Public Wholesale Water Supply District Number 17 operating agreement.
Yes. Now, I'd like to take a few minutes on this one. The agreement that you have in your packet, I've kind of went through the why here, and I'd like to spend just a bit of time because Newton is a part of the Wholesale Water District that's made up of 4 member cities, Newton, North Newton, Halstead, and Sedgwick, and you've all heard us talk about that. We formed the district in 1997, and when it was formed, that didn't kick us off pumping water. There was a lot of process that went through that to get to the point where we had wells. And part of that involved negotiation with the state because 2 of our partners in this, Halstead and Sedgwick, were in need of water. They were in need of quality water. And Sedgwick's water was, in a glass, it was black. It had iron and manganese contamination. And Halstead's was not great, but it wasn't as bad as Sedgwick's. But they had some wells that they had been perfecting, and if you don't do the paperwork and all the filings and get everything done by your 20-year period and get your paperwork in or an extension done, then you lose the right to that water, because until it's perfected, it's not considered yours. And so what we ended up doing is we were able to roll in the rights, or a portion of them, to the district's rights with some additional rights that were found, because you have to find a spot in the Equus that still has the ability for you to sink a well and is not overpopulated with wells, if you will. And so we went through that process, and then we built all of the infrastructure, and you can see the wells here shown on the screen. It shows 6. There's really the 2 there at 6 where pH 6A and pH 6 are shown. That's a battery well, so there's a battery of 2 that are pumping at that location. And then there was a lot of line work that had to be put in to take from the wells to Mission Plant. Mission Plant, the treatment plant that's owned by Newton. And then there were separate agreements for that at the time, in addition to the agreement that formed the district, that Newton was going to be the agency that would provide the treated water. So raw water is coming to our treatment plant from the Wholesale Water District. Now, in the state of Kansas, water law is complicated and it's tricky. And you can't just go out and say, hey, I want to sink a well here anywhere you want, and think that that's going to work, because you have to have the approval from the state to do that, especially when you're a public agency like ours. And the process that you go through, you have to prove that you need the water. And that's the perfection period, is you're going through a proofing, if you will. And you can't bank water. But the law does allow for, when you form a district like we have done, they like you to have a regional approach. And as we put 4 member cities together, the reason that Newton was involved in this process is because we wanted to have a long-term water supply. We have 14 wells of our own. The city of Newton has their own wells. And we have some very, very old rights. They're vested rights. And North Newton had a couple of wells that were their own as well, but they needed additional water immediately. Because they had grown a little bit and they needed more water. So everybody was kind of in it for a little bit different purpose. And because we formed as a group, the state was able to allow us to claim some additional water, in our case, that could take us into the future. And so this is a pretty big deal for Newton as we've been going through this process of perfecting the wells. And the cities have been working together. There's a board that's formed, and I kind of go into some detail here about that. There is a representative for each of the member cities, and Newton has 2 representatives that serve on the board. So there's 5 members on the Wholesale Water District Board, and they are the ones that make the decisions about the board and about the district. And they set the water rates for the district. They have been the ones that, they review all of the budget. They review anything that we've had to do with the state that has to do with the financing of the budget. And any of our water rate paperwork, all of that stuff, anything that you do for the city, they do for the district. But the district has no employees. We all work for the district, except for the district does have an attorney, and that's Brad Jantz, that he works via contract. And then I serve as the general manager. Initially, the city manager of Newton was the city manager. That was Jim Heineke. And then when he retired, the board appointed me, and I have served as the general manager since that time in the early, mid-2000s. And Donna and her staff, they take care of all of the paperwork. And then there's an agreement between the district and the city of Newton, and our staff takes care of the maintenance of the district. So the maintenance of the wells and the properties and the booster stations, because there's 2 booster stations, one for Halstead and one to Sedgwick, to boost the water that comes in, that's treated, runs through the transmission lines, and then it gets boosted up to their towers. Because this stuff is traveling several miles. I think there's another map up here too that kind of shows that. It's a bit hard to read, but Mission Plant is at the top, and then you have a lot of lines and a lot of wells, and we're delivering these to cities that, when you think about it geographically, are not right next door. We're neighbors, but we're not right next door geographically, if you would. So this whole process, the perfection period, pumping the wells, we were allowed a certain amount that we could pump from each well. We were allowed a certain amount that we could pump as the group. So there's a couple of wells that we could pump a certain amount from, and then the other 2 wells we could pump a certain amount from. But if we were pumping out of these 2 wells, then you couldn't pump a certain amount out. This was a lesser amount you could pump out of the others. And so they're all tied together, and you can't pump, you could only pump them at a certain rate too. So the rates were the rate that they are pumped at. So the gallons per minute that are being pumped is set by the state as well. And so you go through this process to perfect that you have the water that's there and that you need to utilize the water. Well, that process took us 20 years, and then we did a little extension because we didn't get it all completed. If you have any blip, if you have to replace a meter, if you do anything in any one of those years, then that year doesn't count because there's all these little rules in the water law. And so I believe that by the end of this year, we're going to have perfection completed. That is definitely the goal. And our agreement with the member cities was good until we paid off the bonds. And we paid off the bonds that paid for the improvements, the wells and the water lines that are shown on the map. And we paid that off in 2019. And so now, after perfection, we need to have an operating agreement because Halston and Sedgwick, their only water supply is via the district. And North Newton needs a bit more from them, but since they changed how they were receiving water, remember they used to receive their water through us. They used to send their water from their wells to our treatment plant. We treated it, and then it came back through our transmission lines and distribution lines. And before they built our tower, it was pressured from our towers. Well, they changed all of that, and so they had no way to get their district water unless it came through us, and they didn't want to have to pay a fee for the treatment and the distribution and the transmission line use. And so they have not been receiving water from us for the last few years. I'm switching hats on you, us being the district. Moving forward, the district, in order for it to stay viable, you have to, there's always expenses because the wells are always running, you're always paying the electricity. You, of course, equipment that has worked over time during the perfection period isn't going to immediately fail at the end of the perfection period. But here in a year or two, there may be things that have to be replaced. We're gradually going through that process. And so there is expenses because the budget has expenses that have to be handled and all of the maintenance of that. And so we as a partner have to pay into that as we move along. And so do each of the other member cities. And so this operating agreement sets all of those things in place. And it's also, we tried to think of everything that could come about. Because what could happen, just to give you some idea of something that needs to be covered in the agreement that you might not think about if your mind isn't always in water agreements, is let's say that Halstead ends up with a big business and they end up using more water than is allocated for them. Because as we have went through the perfection period, we are now stating that a certain amount of that water The water belongs to the district according to the state of Kansas, but because we pumped a certain amount and utilized it here in Newton, we say that a percentage of that kind of belongs to us in a way, and a certain percent of that water belongs to Halsted and Sedgwick. So if Halsted gets a big business that comes in that's a big water user and they use more than has been allotted to them in the agreement, they may need to ask for some additional water. And what if we all grew at the same time? What if all cities grew at the same time and everybody needed more water? The district could go out and purchase, so could each of the cities, but the district could as well, and it needs to be covered in the agreement, could go out and purchase an irrigation well from a farmer. Once you have the right, you could purchase the right and do a change of place of use paperwork to move that water to be used someplace else. Attorneys thought all this stuff up. And so they go through, so there are a lot of things that are addressed in this agreement, the what-if scenarios, because we're at the beginning of the post-perfection period once we have went through perfection. And there has not been another agreement that we were able to find, Brad and I, when we looked, that has a member city set up like we do. And we do not, the plan is not to allow other cities to ever be a member or other agencies to ever be a member. We might supply water to somebody else if it was right and they wanted to pay to extend a line to them. And we could sell water to them for a period of time, similar to here in the news that Wichita's selling water, to Mulvane, yeah, or some other city. That might be something that the district could do at some point in time, and so we've tried to cover that scenario here, but they still wouldn't be a member of the district. Only these 4 agencies that have went and done all the hard work of perfecting the wells would be the members of the district, okay? And then one of the things that I want to point out to you on page 11, one thing that we thought was pretty important as we looked at the budget and we anticipate what we believe the expenses are going to be. Yeah, we can talk about that one too. Yeah, that's good. Let's talk about that while we're on it. So this shows the rights, pardon me, so far, who has pumped how much water. And there's a lot of calculations that I did, and I've explained them ad nauseum to the board to the point they're tired of hearing them, and we can go into that in detail if you would like. But the point is, in simple form, is this looks at how much water was pumped from the beginning of time when we started pumping in 2000 through 2020. We looked at a 20-year period because that's the initial perfection period. And how much was pumped. And of the total, how much of that belonged to Newton? So 60% of the total was what was pumped. And so then you look at the little portion of that chart that says water rights available following perfection. All of these numbers are in gallons to keep it simple. And each of the water rights has a file number. And then there's combinations of file rights like I was speaking about. And it shows how many gallons you could pump in a year's time. Well, this is assuming that we can hit the perfection number. We're not going to hit the perfection number on every one of the wells. It's going to be slightly under on some because some of them maybe are as not a high a producing well as another one. And that's the whole perfection period, is to show what's the quality of this well. Not only can you use the water, but is the water good, a good perfecter. And so the amount of gallons is going to decrease when we finally get our perfection paperwork, but it won't be a significant amount. That's the goal. And so we could say initially that say 60% of this, we could say belongs to Newton. However, what we've tried to do is set aside a small percent of a pool that's available to anyone. And so we took 15% of the total amount of what is going to be the perfection amount and set aside in a pool that could be utilized by any of the cities if they grew and needed an additional amount. You might say, well then, Suzanne, why wouldn't you push for 60% of the total to be Newtons instead of 60% of 85% of the total? Well, because we also set that the expense side, if the expenses are not covered by the revenues that are brought in by the district, then any overage, the percentage would be paid at the same rate. Okay, and so we looked at keeping this pool of water that's available should one of the cities grow exponentially and need additional rights in addition to what their percentage was. Then they just have to go to the board and request that, okay? So that's that chart.
Can I ask a question real quick on this
You
chart?
betcha.
Chart too.
Okay, I'm just wondering around that 2003, 2004, 2005 timeframe, what happened that we went from 303 million to 94 million? Just curious, did we,
Well, okay, here's the, you're right. I'm
you said
glad
we were going to spend some time on this, so let's spend some
Okay,
time on
let's-
this.
yeah.
I'm just curious, that's all.
Okay, here's the thing that's different about Newton in this respect. Remember, we have our own wells. We didn't have to take water from the district.
Okay,
And so we were taking water because we wanted to show, there's no way they could perfect these wells without Newton taking some of the water. Because you can't pump enough to show the need.
yeah.
So it was a balance of need, and then we had to pay for it too. And so what we were doing was investing money in the district so that we had a long-term supply so that our community would always have water available.
Okay,
And that year just happened to be a year that we said, okay, it wasn't that we needed less water by any means. This is not even close to all the
This
water
is
that we
just what came
use in
from
a
the
year's
district
time.
versus
Not
our
even
own.
close.
Okay, yeah.
We were at the same time pumping from Newton wells.
okay,
And it could have been, that was one of the years that we had to do some work on one of the district wells.
I knew there
And
was
I'd
an
have to go back and
interesting
look.
explanation to it.
Yeah,
That's all I
there
wanted to know.
is.
Thank you.
There was, yes.
Which would probably be why we're not asking for as much of an allowance as compared to the others. So when you look at North Newton, they use 20 million gallons, but their allowance is almost 24 million. Halsted uses 51 million, but their allowance is 92 million. So there's quite a percentage increase there off of what they're using versus what they're asking for in the allowance, but there isn't that much of an increase on ours. And is that because we have our own wells?
Well, there is that much of an increase because look at, if you have to average all of this out a little bit. So there were some years where we pumped even more. But yes, you're right in the fact that Halsted and Sedgwick don't have any place else to get it. And so what we tried to do was set a high enough increase in the percentage that would be taken by Halsted and Sedgwick. So Sedgwick is the one that kind of set, where we set the bar with this, looking at how much they'd pump it over time, and if they had a certain percentage of growth, this is what they would need. But remember, it also goes back to, if the expenses are over, who's going to pay the percentage of the expenses too? And we didn't want to have to pay a bunch of that either. So trying to balance all of that out in the formula.
Right, well,
Okay.
Sedgwick their allowance is 30% more than their usage.
Yes,
Newton's allowance is not 30% more than our usage, and that's because we have other sources.
right. Yes.
We have our own wells as well, correct.
So, but at any rate, it's still quite a bit of water that would be available to us in addition to what we have. And this is the only way that you can do that. You can't get enough water. The state's not going to let us go out. If we found another location that had not been appropriated and we wanted to put a well there, the state wouldn't allow it, we, the city of Newton, because we already have enough water. But when you do it as a group in a district like this, in a regional format, they will allow it. Okay? And that's a very simplistic explanation of the law.
I love your zeal.
Okay, so the other thing I want to point out is on page 11, and this is what will be important to the smaller cities too. And North Newton, I know, is looking at this closely, and Brad and I are going, I think it's next week, to North Newton. They're going to discuss this at length, the whole document again, before we all meet in November. But on page 11, under membership fee, currently the agreed minimum purchase by each member shall be 10 million gallons, which shall be reviewed annually. That'd be 10 million gallons in a year's time. That sounds like a humongous number, but we would use on average, maybe 3 million gallons in a day. So for us to have to buy that amount of water from the district is not as big a deal as that is to these smaller cities. And that's because we want to make sure that everybody has skin in the game here. We've helped get the whole district to the perfection period, but we also, the We want to still be a partner as we move forward, because what's important to our neighboring cities is important to us. If they do well, they succeed, we succeed, right? And they aren't going to succeed without water. And so that's why we're trying to balance this all out and make it fair. And that was what the attempt was with this operating agreement. And if you see things you would like to have changed, please bring them up, because we'd like to know what they are before we get to that November 3rd. It's November 3rd or 4th, I said it in here.
Yeah,
3rd.
and November 3rd is a meeting of all of the governing bodies. So it will be you all, in addition to the Halsted City Council, Sedgwick City Council, and then the actual Wholesale Public Water Supply District Board, which is made up of a couple of members of each of the jurisdictions, as Suzanne mentioned. One from each city plus two total from Newton,
Right,
since we are the kind of the big gorilla on that bench.
yeah. Okay, so that's the long and the short of it. Do you have other questions? If not, we're not asking you to do anything this evening. This is just for information.
And we're just so thankful, because this has literally been 25 plus years in the making. And so for us to have this perpetual water supply guaranteed for our communities, this is a big deal. This is wonderful, and a lot of cities don't have this kind of privilege.
I was going to ask later because I didn't want to seem like maybe I missed something along the way, but I'll ask it because I'm sure I'm not the only one. This word perfected is used a lot. If you could just, I don't want to say quickly in a sense that you took too long, but just easily explain, what does perfected mean when it comes to a water well?
I had that same.
Perfected means that you have pumped the amount of the water right that the state says that you have the ability to claim as your own.
Okay.
You have to show that you can use it, not in just 1 year's time, but you have a period of time to do that. And you have to show, just like I said about each well, how much is pumped out of each well. And so if it's perfected, you have showed that you need to use it. You have that need, and there's a use for it. It's tricky, though, when you're looking at a district, because again, we have other wells. There are not many animals like this out there, the district.
Do we tell the state how much the district wants, or do they set that amount and then we have to learn to work within that amount?
We had very spirited discussions with the state because.
25 years ago or
Yes,
over 25 years?
Yeah.
Or
25
Ongoing.
years ago.
For 25 years,
Yeah.
yeah.
20, in 1997.
Okay.
And I just happened to be here so that I was a part of that. I'm going to get to see the perfection, because that doesn't always happen. And we went to the state and sat and had to talk with the chief engineer. And because the big issue was that Halsted was going to lose their rights, and they had like 1,072 acre feet or more. In the battery well was what was their well. And it wasn't a battery at the time, it was only one well, but it was a good producing well. And we were able then, after all the testing and all the paperwork and everything, to be able to put another pump in there and be able to utilize that water and get more out of that well. It's the best producer, that well. But we could have lost all of that, we being the region.
The whole, yep. Yeah, they were about to lose the well because they had not completed the paperwork for perfection at that point in time.
Okay.
Well, oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, this is even confusing too. Denise made a good point. She said, tell them that they weren't all perfected at the same time. And that's the other key. The 2 Halsted wells, they only gave us 5 years to perfect them. And then the additional 4 wells, we had another 20 years, but the total of all the wells combined, so the Halsted wells came in with the total. And so the total amount that we were allowed to pump from the whole, because remember, we could pump a certain amount out of the Halsted wells, and we could pump a certain amount out of the other 4 wells, but if the Halsted wells were pumping, we couldn't pump as much out of the other wells. It's quite a little algorithm of numbers when you look at it. And so we perfected the 2 in the beginning, and then the other 4 are going, but then the combined group is still going too, and that's the one we're working on this year.
Are most of these in the Equus?
They are all in the Equus beds. We are very much on the edge, and Newton's wells are kind of all around it as well.
Have we got pretty good thickness? The water structure, is it pretty
It's not as deep, say, where ours are as it is where Wichita's are. Wichita's are a little bit farther west of ours. We're kind of on the edge. I mean, it starts to get on the edge of the Equus beds. And if you think about it, it's an underground lake. And we're kind of on the edge of the lake, if you will. Not the very edge, but
Are we still looking for water? Or are we pretty comfortable with the
we're not looking right
reserves that
now.
we have? Yeah,
Because we've had a lot on our plate here.
yeah, yeah.
And remember, there are no employees of the district.
If we were to buy a well, do you have to take out the well
If it's-
structure and
if
put in
it's-
stainless steel?
If it's already perfected, then we would have the ability to purchase if they would allow us to change the place of use. And there's just a lot of rules that, if you will, that come into
Yeah,
play on it.
there's restrictions, I think, for cities that farmers don't have. If
That's
you're-
exactly
If you're going to
right.
be drinking it, then
Agreed.
you've got considerable expense for
Drinking and
Right.
reworking the well.
Drinking and treating
Yes.
versus using like as irrigation.
Yeah,
Absolutely, sir.
okay.
Well, thank you for that, Suzanne. It's actually pretty interesting when you listen to
We
it.
get-
It's really important. This is
Yeah.
really
It is
important.
very important.
We
I mean,
should
you don't
get
have a
some
city without water.
certificate for going to class.
Yeah, yeah.
CEU.
Yeah, there you go.
I was
Continuing
thinking that,
education.
like-
You're now SMEs, subject matter experts.
Yeah, I was thinking that sometimes post-career people have this thing that they did really, really well in their career, and perhaps yours at one day, Suzanne, is going to be perfecting water wells
Yeah.
and creating user districts.
I don't know.
If you ever write a book on it, I think I need some royalties to it, because I just gave you the idea,
Yeah,
so.
that's just, there will be no book.
That would be a nightmare for them.
Yeah.
But remember, on November 3rd, there will be a joint meeting of all the governing bodies.
Remember that.
And it'll be at 7 PM at Meridian, I believe. Is that correct, ma'am?
No.
Meridian, oh, excuse me.
We are
Oh,
at
yeah, fire station
Station
number
3.
3. Yeah, fire station number 3. So, yeah, we just need a quorum of folks to be present from each governing body so that we can get this agreement put into place.
And we will hold that as a special meeting, because we do want we want everybody to take action all at once.
Okay, put it down.
All right?
What time was it?
7 PM.
7.
I would think I was thinking about that book and missed that. All right, thank you, Suzanne, for that. It is important. Without the water, we don't have a city.
That's
So,
right.
Andy's son gets to draw the cover of the book. That's
There
my-
you go.
She's our water goddess.
Yeah. All right, item number 11, receive bids and award the contract for the Autumn Glen 3rd Edition paving.
Yes, Commissioners. We had 3 bidders on September 20th, and we had, the successful bidder was Conspec, which is Kansas Paving, at $840,651, and we would recommend that bids be awarded to them for the Autumn Glen 3rd paving. Remember that up to $200,000 of the entry road for this project is paid for by the city, the portion there in orange and the intersections. And this opens up a whole bunch more lots there on the north side of Autumn Glen to get houses built here in Newton. So we would recommend that you award bids to Kansas Paving as commented.
I would make the motion to award the bid contract to the successful bidder.
I will second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Thank you. Item 12, receive bids and award contract for the Sand Creek Station 4th Edition paving.
Yes, we took bids for this project, same day, September 20th, and same 3 bidders. The low bidder, again, was Conspec Inc., which is Kansas Paving, at $203,364, and we would recommend that you award bids to them.
I move that we approve Kansas Paving for this bid.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we didn't have anybody sign up for the citizens forum tonight. Is there a need for an executive session?
No,
Not
sir.
This evening? Okay, thank you. All right, well, let's go around and we'll start on the end with Commissioner Valentine.
Well, first of all, thank you to our first responders for being here. We appreciate you greatly. Glad to hear that no one was injured or seriously injured as far as our staff, fire and EMS, with this huge fire that we just had. Thank you for all the work that went into that. And I know they can't be here, but all of those that came to help too. Saw them pulling in, and just a real great feeling to see such teamwork and people wanting to rise to that occasion. Drove by there, and even though there's all that destruction, if you will, it was all cleaned up. It was also taken care of and cleaned up, and just really appreciate the expertise of our people very much. Thank you.
Well, it was a very beautiful day on Saturday for the chili cook-off and for Blues Brews and Barbecue, so I hope many of our citizens enjoyed the day.
Thank you. Commissioner Sinnott.
Well, means we've tackled the fire and the first responders. Thanks again for all that hard work and everything, and the great community efforts this past weekend. Boy, it's great to see the weather break and people come outside and enjoy the community, all the great things going on, the art galleries deal, the chili cook-off. It's unfortunate we didn't have the race this year. The 5K would have been great. But thanks to all the staff for everything that you do. And if you want to have some fun, come out and watch me try and play golf on Friday at the Newton 150th.
Commissioner Cray.
I don't have anything to share. Thank you.
Okay, Kelly.
I was just also going to mention the Newton 150 is this coming Friday. So tee off registration's at noon and tee off is at 1 o'clock. I think we still have a few spots open if anyone is interested. And this will be one of the last wrap-up events for our 150th birthday. So we hope
What's that called?
anyone will join us. Yeah,
What's that called?
the sesquicentennial.
Okay.
It took me 2.5 years to learn how to pronounce it correctly, but now I've got it. So.
Chris.
No, sir.
Suzanne.
No, sir.
No one talk about water rights or nothing like that?
I'm done. I'm out.
Donna? Okay. All right. Well, I had two things. One was the golf tournament, but we've mentioned that, and so I'm excited to go and take the day off from work and go and hang out and play golf. And sorry to Mr. McCatton, our community development director. I think I've told him I was going to play on his team twice now and backed out both times. But also just thankful that my wife's company was a pretty big sponsor, I think, of the event, and so that was cool to have them. And so I'm gonna go play with her company, and I'll represent her well, rub shoulders, I guess. I don't know, something. But come out and support that. I think that's a fun event, and all the proceeds benefit the library. So exciting for that. And then I just wanted to say thank you to the other commissioners. With my transition and jobs, I missed our last Thursday morning meeting, but it was nice to know that when you're part of the team that your absence is fine, that everybody else does a great job. And not that I need to be there, and that's the beauty of it, is that I don't need to be there for this still to function and work correctly. And I did hear from Commissioner Cry afterwards, and we talked for a little bit, and he kind of filled me in on some things, and then Suzanne and I met via Zoom, and so just nice to be able to do that, and just thanks everyone for having such a great team. All right, meeting adjourned. Have a good evening.